Hi, I'm Mark Richard, and you're listening to PureTalk, the podcast where we talk about life, health, and living pure. On today's episode, we welcome health and justice activist Susan Stanfield. From a humble upbringing in Vancouver, BC, Susan never thought that oil, war, and revolution would jolt her out of a simple married life. Pregnant with her first child, Susan's husband was kidnapped at the beginning of the Arab uprisings in 2011. Since then, she's embarked on a sole purpose to fight for those living with injustice all over the world, to become a leader and a voice of change. This is her story, and this is Pure Talk. Sue Stanfield, welcome to Pure Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let me start with a health and justice activist. If I read that, what is that? What does that mean? Where do you put your focus every day?
Well, I've been an activist since 2003, and I was never not health, but I hadn't bumped into any health injustice personally. And that started when my husband was kidnapped, which I'm sure we'll talk about. That was because of food. And I started studying those systems of corruption that are around things like food and health. And I just decided to apply myself. Health is a very broad topic anyway. It covers food, it covers soil, it's about earth and human health. So I tried to kind of create a niche for myself to focus on those issues mostly. Health, the broad-based health umbrella, and the justice in there.
And you mentioned maybe the biggest story, the biggest part in your story, and is that you have already. So when I go onto your website and the first line you see is, "Have I got a story?" Do you ever? I mean, usually when you read that, it's going to be something is coming up that's going to be light and airy that I think is going to be, very fun and cheery. It doesn't go that way. So without me explaining it, do you want to explain sort of that story and how that happened?
Yeah, the quick version.
Yeah.
Well, we ended up in Libya working to make some money because we were victims of the mortgage collapse.
Okay.
Right? The mortgage meltdown or whatever it's called in Cape Town.
Sure.
And my husband had invested in properties, and we found ourselves, at the short end of that stick, and he needed a high salary fast.
Yeah.
So he works in the international market building hotels. And so we went to Libya very naively. I knew nothing about Libya.
Yeah.
It's like fantastic. It's on the Mediterranean. Lots
Great.
of hummus.
It's a vacation.
Yeah. And then that was the beginning of the Arab uprisings and the revolutions that were beginning. I think primarily social media had a lot to do with it, but we ended up in a culture full of unrest.
Okay.
And the revolution began, and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was abducted.
Wow. And you're where at the time? Like, where were you?
I'm working in public relations.
Yes.
In Vancouver. I'm working for George Affleck.
Okay.
Who is the former leader of the NPA.
I see. Okay. Yep.
I'm pregnant. I'm hiding my pregnancy from him.
Right.
Because I'm employed for the first time as a pregnant woman. I guess health. Yeah. Again, justice, right?
Yeah.
I'm nervous that he won't hire me because I'm pregnant.
Of course.
Right? First time pregnancy. And I realized through a phone call that I made, somebody else answered his phone when he was being evacuated. And I realized something was going down. I mean, I was watching the unfolding of the revolution on CNN.
Of course, yeah.
And somebody else answered his phone. I could hear voices. I could hear noise. And the line went dead. And I was like, something's wrong.
Wow. So you're here at the time when it actually happened, when he was actually abducted.
I was living in Kitsilano and working in Yaletown.
Yeah. And so initially, do you have like a Liam Neeson Taken moment, like where you're just, so enraged by that? Where do you go from there?
No, I wasn't enraged because I had already lived in Africa for a long time.
Okay.
And I am an operative.
Yes.
I know how to do hard stuff. I was more curious. And I was shocked by this reality. There's nobody to call when you think something has happened to a family member. There's no leader of the world that solves all the problems. You are on our own. And I learned that in Africa for many years.
Right.
So, I mean, you'll love this. The first thing I did, because I'm really good at it, I Googled. I'm really good at Googling.
Well done. Yeah.
I Googled British engineer Tripoli, because he's British and he's an engineer.
Okay.
On a lark.
Sure.
I thought that really was my only tool.
Yeah.
Sure enough, a story comes up. It's the second story that comes up. 3 men kidnapped in Tripoli. One of them is British.
Wow.
It's there as a news story.
Yeah.
It's on my laptop in the middle of the night.
Yeah. How crazy that you're Googling it's your husband that you would have spoken to daily, whatever, every other day. You have to learn that he's been abducted through a Google search.
And the reason why is the guy that he was abducted with told his wife on the phone, I'm being abducted.
Right.
Before he was abducted. She went to the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yes.
Because she was in Sydney, 12 hours ahead. They published a story that I saw in Vancouver. So if that hadn't happened, I never would have found the story. And I might not have found him because I was the one that located him.
Right. And then how does that happen? So are you, as soon as you see that story, you're jumping on a plane, you're gearing up, you grab the M16 out of the back, like where do you go?
No, because I'm pregnant, right? Right. So I'm like, well, no, of course, what do you do? What does a woman do? I called my dad.
This is adorable.
Dad, I think my husband's been kidnapped,
Yeah.
right? Well, I knew he had been. I knew it was him because it was an Australian and Filipino that were mentioned in the story.
Okay.
And he was with two guys
Yeah.
like that from those countries. So I knew immediately I had been kidnapped, and Gaddafi kidnapped people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I got onto WhatsApp.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And I WhatsApped my best friend in Tripoli, who is also an operative
Okay.
and an activist. And he said, okay, just give me a couple hours. He gets in his car with his mother and drives to the prison that Gaddafi always kidnapped the foreigners in and put in.
Mm-hmm.
It's very common what he did.
Okay.
And he gets back to me 2 hours later. Yep, found him. And told me which prison he was in.
2 hours later.
Yeah, like he literally went right away. And so the time zone thing worked
Yes.
to my advantage for the 2 weeks that he was abducted. Sometimes
Right.
it didn't, sometimes it did.
Right. So excuse my naivete, but why was Gaddafi kidnapping so many people? What was the basis? What was the reason behind all of that? And why is it so well known that your operative over there can go in 2 hours, can find him, but can't do anything about it?
Well, okay, I guess say three reasons. Gaddafi was a lunatic.
Yeah.
Right? He was a controlling dictator for 40 years. And everybody there knew that.
Mm-hmm.
It started out well and fine. He wanted to start a socialist republic, but he turned into a crazy lunatic
Sure.
who kidnapped people all the time, sometimes for ransom. So my husband was bought
Yeah.
out of jail by the British government. Pretty
Okay.
sure I can say that. They wouldn't tell me how much they
Right.
paid for him. But so that was very common, and all the Libyans knew that.
Yeah.
And it was to do with oil. It was always to do with oil because the Gaddafi,
course.
he had the most oil, and Libya has one of the biggest reserves. So it was a game to him.
Sure.
And he was a lunatic. So there was that. And also my husband, the reason why was he witnessed a mass murder on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw him, the secret police and the guards and the revolutionary guards of Gaddafi saw him witnessing the murder.
Right.
And he was holding a camera at the time.
Of course.
So they came in the middle of the night and abducted him.
Wow. And just the wrong place at the wrong time, really.
Yeah, doing the wrong thing, as I told my husband when he was rescued and I was in London with him.
Right. Of course. Yeah. So after you called your dad.
Yeah.
The two of you then grab your M16s and
For
bulk
sure.
up and go
No,
over.
well, my dad, he's never lived outside Canada. He was like,
Right.
oh, Jesus, what do you do? So I went and stayed with him. He lives outside the city, and I just had to kind of leave the city. I had to leave my employment. It was just too weird.
Yeah.
No, he was there for support. I was totally on my own.
Jeez.
I was hustling people in London. Once the British government got involved, they were helping. They basically
Yeah.
told me to back off because you don't want to interfere with William Hague, who was the minister at the time.
Okay.
And they have a whole war room for this.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get journalists. My friend works with Christiane Amanpour in
Right.
DC.
Yeah.
I tried to talk to her, but they wouldn't help me because Christiane was flying over to interview Gaddafi at the time.
Okay.
Gaddafi hadn't been kidnapped.
Yeah.
And she's like, you can't. So there was a lot of heartbreak. Like
Yeah.
people couldn't help me.
Right.
I had a friend who had a friend that knew Bill Clinton. No, I'm sorry, I can't. That's too big an ask. So
Yeah.
it was a really unusual, like what I learned about that was so fascinating. And
Of
it really
course.
pushed me again into activism and thinking, this is so unfair.
Yeah. Well, your whole life is over there, and your whole life is turning upside down. But to all these people, it's a small pond, right? That's how they view it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even his employer, who was in Islamabad,
Mm-hmm.
basically he was working for a Pakistani holding company, was like, well, force majeure, which means it's a war term. We can't do anything. He can't get his salary.
Right.
They owed him his salary for a couple of months.
Yeah.
So all these other problems that happened. So you have to just survive. But I've been a survivor since I was a kid, so I was okay.
Right.
I think I only cried once.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
There's a lot of laughter. I mean, it was so unusual. I would tell people.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, how you doing, Sue? I'd run into them in Yaletown. Oh, fine. Well, my husband's been kidnapped, but I got to go.
It's an unbelievable story. It's one of those stories that you do kind of, it sounds so sarcastic, right? You just don't believe it.
Certainly not people who grew up in Vancouver.
No.
Right? Maybe you live on that side of the world. I mean, if you're from Shad, yeah, you're used to the kidnapping.
Sure. No. Not in our cushy Kitsilano. You know, we're going to the Starbucks or getting your bread from Cobb's. You don't think you're going to hear that story.
Yeah.
It's very true. So now, where are you then when you hear that they've paid the ransom and he's going to be released? Are you here still? Did you fly over there?
Well, I had to make that choice, right? I didn't know how messed up he was.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to go and visit him.
Yeah.
But the way it was financially for me, I didn't have the luxury of just having a holiday.
Of course.
I didn't know if my employer would employ me again. If George, I mean, he would help me, but I had to make a call. And so I bought a one-way ticket.
Wow.
And I packed up my life and being pregnant into a tiny little suitcase. And I knew if I was with him again, we would make a life again somewhere.
Of course.
And so I just went because I had no idea what I was going to find.
And so he was abducted for how long?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Wow. And I guess that he, you couldn't do justice, I guess, him explaining it to you, but in very simple terms, what does he describe those 2 weeks as?
Well, he looked great.
Okay.
It's another funny part of it, right?
Yeah.
He had lost 10 pounds or 15 pounds or something.
Right.
And he had been trying to lose weight in Libya because the food's there is really good. Lots of carbs.
It's a blessing.
And that was one of the first things he said was, don't I look good? I lost so much weight.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't starved, but the reality. He was kind of messed up. He was in therapy for 3 months.
Sure.
In Manchester. We settled in Manchester for a year.
Right.
And his family was there. So I just said, let's just make a life here. Let's have the baby. We'll just be here and we'll just see. Because I knew we weren't going back to Canada and we weren't going back to Libya.
Of course not. Yeah. And so you stayed there then. So how long do you stay in Manchester then?
Almost a year.
Okay.
Yeah. 10 months. Had the baby.
Yeah.
Got the breastfeeding out of the way, made another plan. And then we moved back to Cape Town, which is where we had started.
Right. And is that where... I like to call it Sue's revolution. Was that where that started? Is that so? All of this. I mean, you don't think he gets released. You live in Manchester. Where does the activism then come in? Where do you then sit and think, okay, now I've got to change something? You're on so much on the defensive, right? When something like this happens to you, when do you switch that and say, no, it's time for offense now?
Well, I had always been somewhat of an activist because I watched my mother die when I was 18 from smoking.
Okay.
And in a subtle, subconscious way. So I have always been somebody that has been aware of those issues because of what happened to me.
Yeah.
And my father's a lawyer and my mother is a nurse. So I was raised to do what's right and to speak out in a soft way, not with activism. But and I think every activist will say this, is that they become activists because they personally experience injustice. Like my life had been destroyed. The way I had set it up, somebody just took it away like that.
Yeah.
And so the rebuilding of our life transforms you.
Yeah. And
it's Julian Assange has a quote around this, the moment we become silent, the moment we stop talking about injustice is when we really lose everything and our ability to protect ourselves. So, even at school, like the principal will see me coming and she'll be like, oh, what now? The lifeguard at the beach tells me I'm not allowed to do this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm just that person. So I just believe that you can live your life choosing to speak for justice or not.
Yeah.
You do one or the other.
How much do you think that is? You brought up the in the school hallway, the lifeguard on the beach. In your opinion, how much do you think that's just people speaking out and not wanting to deal with issues, or the female aspect? Like, do you think if you're a male speaking up about, walking down the hall at the school hallway, or you're on the beach speaking to the lifeguard as a male, you're treated differently?
Well, it's funny because most activists are women, and particularly environmental.
Yes.
80% of them are women. Okay. We are always the ones who say, excuse me. It's always a woman who's saying, I don't like what's under there. And from a business standpoint, maybe Bob understands this too. When you have more women on a board, when you have more women involved with your company, the bottom line will be bigger.
Right.
There's a positive to that. So I'm like that maybe more because of being a woman.
Right.
But I wasn't raised in a way to feel that I was any less. I was raised by a very empowered mother.
Right.
So for me, it's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we talk about early home life? Like,
Yeah.
So you said your mother was a nurse, your father was a lawyer. Were you born in Canada? Is it?
Yeah, I was born at St. Vincent's Hospital, which doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. No, I was going to say I don't.
Yeah, I grew up in Shaughnessy.
Okay.
Wonderful little life.
Yeah.
You know, bikes, school, whatever, simple life.
Yeah.
My father had made a big investment in the 70s, like a lot of people, and lost a lot of money in the recession. There was a recession in the 1970s.
Oh, okay.
You're probably too young to remember.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize. Yeah.
So I grew up knowing I had to get a job if I wanted extra stuff. Like, we had our home and life was fine, but there wasn't much extra because of that investment. It was a hotel. And so I started working when I was 13.
Wow.
Yeah, I always had money, which is cool.
Yeah.
I babysat and I worked in a kitchen. I always had money, and my mother encouraged me to do that. Go and work.
Right.
If you want running shoes, you want magazines, you want new hair clips,
Yeah.
you need to get that money.
For sure.
So it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I had a ton of job experience by the time I came out of university.
Absolutely.
I'd already been working for 10 years.
Yeah.
I worked all through university in the summers.
Yeah.
And again, I was sort of raised to do, to be a leader and to do what's right. So I studied international politics at Queen's.
Great.
And I wanted to experience the world and travel the world. I didn't right away.
Yeah.
I did that later, but I was always focused on that.
Yeah. And did you have an end goal to that? So international politics, while you're going through school, where do you think my next step, I'm going to go work at the UN? Where was your next
I wanted
step?
to be a war photographer.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. When I came out of university, I got interested in the Magnum Photo Collective, James Nakway, all these great shooters, Robert Capa, because of the international thing. And my mother had given me a camera for Christmas the year she died. It was under the tree. And so I had those two things, international camera and war photography has always had a cachet.
Sure.
But it's very hard to become a war photographer from Vancouver when you're 23 with no credentials, no photo school, no journalism school. So I ended up in television.
Do you need credentials to run into a war and start taking pictures?
No, but you need to be in a war.
Right.
Yeah, and
Ideally.
you need to have a reason for being there rather than, I just thought it was a good idea. I showed up from Shaughnessy with my camera.
Yeah.
Can I take some pictures?
Exactly.
I didn't have a bridge to that world. I had an opportunity to go to New York and study with the Magnum Photo Collective, but I couldn't get it together one summer, and I needed $5,000 or something, and I was 23, and I had a couple of opportunities, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. Where do you think that comes? So landscapes are great. You could have taken pictures of those. Some people are great. Some portraits. No, like where do you think that comes from? That not the most difficult route, but you want something more challenging. It seems like you want to do something that's going to make more of a difference, or really showcase a different part of the world, or showcase an injustice in the world, or why? Where do you think that comes from? Like at 23, you want to go to war and take pictures.
Well, I was raised around a dinner table that inspired us as kids to think.
Yeah.
I think that's really the basis. We were always challenged to think and understand, not necessarily about international politics. I don't have some big international family. That's fair. But I was encouraged to be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think having the international politics as my base education, my BA, really opened my eyes, and I started meeting people from other parts of the world. Yeah. When I was at Queen's. Right. For the first time, I went 5,000 kilometers away from home when I was 17. Okay. Just catapulting me into another world. Started traveling to the States. Started traveling to other countries. Absolutely. And I just got bitten by it, and I didn't, because my mother had died, I didn't have anybody telling me not to. Mm-hmm. My dad was just like, well, call me collect. Right. Have fun. Yeah. I didn't have a mother. So in some ways the loss was immense. In other ways it was a ticket to a very different life that my girlfriends never had. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Just by chance. Yeah. That mother umbrella was gone, the chains were off. Well, and also a role model. Yeah. I didn't have a mother role model anymore. I had nothing. Sure. And the death kind of pushed my family apart for many years. Mm-hmm. So I was on my own. Okay. And I just went left. I just turned left when all my other friends were turning right. I turned left. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So back to moving to Cape Town with your husband, taking your family to Cape Town. And what do you find yourself doing there then in Cape Town? Well, we had lived there before. Yeah. Right. Well, after the kidnapping, I realized that I was going to have to become the breadwinner eventually. Okay. Or maybe because he had always earned high incomes in a high risk areas.
Right.
So the job offer he got after the kidnapping, and he was very excited about it, and maybe I should have said yes, was in Azerbaijan, in a city called Baku.
Sure.
Super growing, booming part of Eurasia right now.
Right.
Also right next to Pakistan, which is one of the world's most dangerous countries.
Yeah.
So,
he just wanted to lose more weight.
Well, he wanted to make the money to take care of the family. I mean, there I was, 5 months pregnant. So I thought, okay, what can I do? What skill do I have? I'm not going to be a TV producer in Cape Town, but I am a cook. And that was my first career. Okay. So I opened up a vegan little food joint by the beach.
Yes.
I didn't call it vegan, but I've always been a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And it worked and everybody loved it. And I was making some money. And I was like, I could build this into a profitable business.
Yeah.
And plant food and veganism back then in 2013 was very new.
Okay.
And so that was the plan, to build a food company that could allow us to have income, and he could work for the company, or I would build it up with partners, and he wouldn't have to go to these crazy places.
Right. And you did that?
Yeah, I did that, and I did that here as well.
What was the company called?
Goji Go.
Yes.
Goji Go.
Which still exists today?
It does, but I also realized standing there, selling sandwiches to a couple hundred people a day, that I had an opportunity to do something much bigger with change and with food.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided, because we were way too early for vegan fast food.
Right.
It's probably just good timing now.
Now, for sure.
So we lost more money.
Right.
And I thought, I know how to do the most powerful thing in the world, and that's produce television. So I'm going to do that. And so I started building my life and my brand and my activism around content.
Right.
To inspire people, particularly women all over the world.
Sure.
Do what I'm doing. Do something different rather than selling them a sandwich. If I can teach them about the global land and food systems, much bigger change, much faster.
Definitely. Yeah. Can you explain the shirt? So mother plus food equals security.
Yeah, well, this is a shirt
that.
I made for Goji Go when we opened in Canada. Did I make this here? Yeah, I made this here. That's it was just a marketing thing, and I like designing. I'm a designer.
Yes.
And everybody, it was catchy. And when I wear this in the downtown east side, because that's where I did my first justice project, everybody yells at me across the street, right? Hey, love your T-shirt. It's a justice slogan.
For sure.
And because of food security being a part of my little ecosystem of justice, a lot of our food problems are around security and sovereignty and justice.
Right.
Not just feeding people healthy food, but access to food, rights to food.
Right. A big part of your website that I've noticed is there's a lot of things that come back to healing. So healing the earth, healing humans. That seems to be the future we're entering is going to have to be the healing process. I think we've done a lot of damage so far.
Yes.
So where do you see that going, and maybe how you're going to help with that, or where do you want to help with that?
Well, it's like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And why I love this brand, this company, Pure.
Yeah.
And it really, probably 80% of our problems can be solved by food, because food solves land problems and chemical problems.
Right.
And it is the number one way to rebuild human health. For the body is food, it's medicine. Yeah. So I'm on the same journey that you're on.
Yeah.
Spread the word, inspire people, offer them, like I don't have a retail business like what you're involved with, but create an access point for people to make different choices.
Right.
And a lot of people just actually don't know much about food. I learned that with my restaurants. Yeah. Most people actually don't know anything about food, and they don't know how to cook anymore.
I'm guilty of that as well, but
so, and I'm 50, so I learned about, and I grew up with a clean food system, and I was forced to learn to cook at 13 years of age. Wow. And that's not very typical anymore. No,
at all. Especially I find being, Vancouver is such a food city, right? Everybody seems to go out to eat. You can't get a table anywhere on a Friday night in Vancouver. It seems to be everyone's out eating. Not that that's an issue, not that that's a problem, but I just, no. So that if the parents are doing it, why would the kids then learn to cook at such a young age, right?
Yeah, and the cooking thing is good, but it's actually more important just to purchase clean food from clean systems.
Right.
You cooking it yourself really isn't the change.
Yes.
The change is, it's actually better to have more Pures where we can all access the clean food quickly.
Right.
Rather than all of us dragging these vegetables up to our apartments.
Yeah.
You guys sell the vegetables, right? It's a more efficient system. But in answer, I guess, to your question before is, for me, the future, it really lies in this sort of education piece and using television or podcasts or photography or the things that I do, one of my big projects I would love to do when we're based back in England again, which is the goal, because my husband's British, is to bring to life a TV series that I created called Edible Planet. Just by accident. I was actually going to call it Edible Plant.
Right.
And then I was designing one night and I was like, no, Edible Planet. And to me, that's the future. If we can rebuild the planet to be mostly edible, like in the dinosaur time, it seems like a simple metaphor, but it's not. If we can rebuild a clean, mostly edible planet and get rid of all these chemicals and lessen the built environment and all that, we will save the planet and we will save ourselves.
For sure.
Just by nature of the food system, we will heal.
Right. It's amazing the way I find, especially starting to work at Pure, the way people, I mean, I'm guilty of it as well, but the way people treat their bodies. Like, food is the fuel we need. And it's amazing that you would never, if you buy a really nice car, you would never throw Gatorade in your car because you know that's not what your car needs to run. But you have no problem, right, throwing Gatorade in yourself for 4 hours while you're on the basketball court or something. Like, it's just such a backwards mentality that you're treating an object better than you're treating your own body.
Okay, so this is where the justice piece comes in.
Okay.
One of the main reasons why people do that is that it's more abundant and accessible to buy crappy food.
Right.
It's everywhere. I mean, go into a petrol station, a gas station, store.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to go there this morning to get some stuff for my kids' lunch. I found apples and oranges and bananas. But other than some orange juice and maybe some power bars, 95% of what's in that store is toxic.
Yeah.
So it's, the will, we have to have the will, but the justice piece is Canada has a very unhealthy food system.
Right.
It really is. And you look at a comparison to, say, Northern India, the state of Sikkim, which is now probably the first jurisdiction in the world that has gone completely chemical free. It's an organic food system. We can do that.
Yeah.
We could do that in Canada.
Absolutely.
Why aren't we doing that in Canada?
That's my next question.
Yeah.
Where it's not a money thing. It can't be a financial thing. I would say that, Canada's affluent enough to fix their food system, I would hope.
It's policy.
Yeah.
And it's lawmakers who, so as an activist, I would say, who are choosing an easier, bigger, more powerful system. We have a very monopolistic food system in Canada. We have one of the largest lands and food systems in the world, our prairies.
Right.
That's within one nation.
Yeah.
Right? Our prairies. And it's not really working to the benefit, well, it's not working at all, to the benefit of most people, from access to earning income through the food system to all the way to chemicals. So we have a very large scale industrial system.
Right.
And we're paying the price for it. 1 in 2 Canadians get cancer now.
Yeah.
1 in 2. I mean, that's an epidemic.
That's incredible.
That is an epidemic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But we can change that. We could change that very quickly. If we had the will, we could turn Canada into an organic country within 12 months.
Sure.
If we had the political will.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, why do you think not enough people are advocating for that, or why not enough people are taking notice of that, or wanting, searching for change?
Well, it has changed immensely in 2 years.
So far, yeah.
Huge.
Right.
And it's a lot of it is because of activists. The vegan activists have done a huge service to plant-based organic agriculture.
Right.
I think 80% of the world's land that's used for food is growing food to feed animals. It's chemical-based agriculture, 80%. So we're all eating the other stuff, the good produce or whatever, is only actually 20% of agricultural land base.
Right.
So we can switch that. It's hard. It's hard changing a big system.
Yeah.
But it's like any form of empowerment, and apartheid is a great example that we could talk about if we have time. It all comes down to money. We all have the power in our wallet. You make a choice today what you're going to invest in, a big chemical food system or a small organic clean food system. And that's power. And every big system is fueled by the money of everyday people like you and I. Right. So we have the power.
Right. Do you think enough of the middle class has enough money to access that, though? Like, to access organic food, or has the...
Yeah, and so vegan food is a good example, okay? When the first vegan manufactured products, like the sausages and stuff, let's use that as an example, hit the shelves, they were probably 10 to 15% more expensive than they are now. But more people are eating them now, so the price is going down. Okay. So it's the Beyond Burger scenario. Yeah, the prices are going to really drop because more people are eating them. So if we use system tools like supply and demand, we can change that. One of the reasons why fresh organic vegetables are expensive is mostly they're not grown here.
Mm-hmm.
So why aren't we growing? We should be growing organic vegetables downtown.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we'd have more and the prices would go down.
Right. Yeah. I blame my generation. I blame the millennials. I think we've sort of, well, I think we've sort of screwed up that gap of, it seems to be there's some people in the older generation who see the benefits of it, but there's a lot of younger people now coming up that are much younger than me that they see the importance of clean food and access to, access to clean food. That I've noticed anyways, where for me, I know it's better for me. I could still care less.
Well, I think the body can handle, and maybe the planet could handle, if we had a system that was 80 to 85% clean and fair,
right,
then wow, that would be a major success. We're never going to reach 100%.
Yeah.
But we have a system now that is probably 20 to 30% healthy. So,
improving.
You're going to eat 3 times in a day. If you made good choices for 2 of those meals, we'd all be winning.
Right.
It's not such a big shift as most people think.
Yeah.
You can always have a Coca-Cola. You can always have a meal at McDonald's. Your body can handle it. The planet can handle it in small amounts. It's just, I think in the States now, 20% of all meals are fast food.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that's 350 million people. A fifth of their diet is coming out of fast food drive-thrus.
Right. Wow. I don't need a Coca-Cola every day. It's just the best mixer for Jack Daniels. Is usually like those just go hand in hand. Yet I have, my mother's American, and so I have a lot of American relatives. And when I go down there, their relationship to food, and I feel comfortable saying this because they're relatives of mine, their relationship to food is a lot different, right, than us.
What state are they in?
Well, they're in upstate New York, so they're just in Buffalo.
Okay.
So it's very close to the border even. But even from that, you're just crossing the border, which is 30 minutes away from where my parents live. The relationship to food and their portion size and they just don't, it seems to be it's so different. It's a different world as soon as you cross that borderline. And
so are you saying it's less healthy or it's more processed, or what
immensely?
Are you
saying? Yeah, it's incredible. The health aspect of it is just so, they don't think twice about drinking soda, as they call it, every meal, right? Every dinner is just, let's open a bottle of soda to have, right, with our fried chicken or whatever we just bought. It's just it's amazing. They're so close in geography, but you just cross that line and it's just the relationship they have to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's another answer to your question of why justice, or why someone like me coming from this part of the world is focused on justice, is this culture has always been focused on justice. I mean, this is where Greenpeace was founded.
Yeah.
We had the first habitat from UN.
Yeah.
And you look at the lower mainland, I think out of all the communities, say in North America, if there's 1 million communities or whatever, the lower mainland is probably up in the top 20 of healthy communities. This is the epicenter of, we're probably one of the healthiest communities in Canada.
Right.
For sure. So it also depends on where you live.
Definitely.
You live up you're an Eskimo or Inuit and you live up north. What do you have? What kind of access do you have to clean organic food? You got seals that you're going to eat, or you've got stuff coming up on trucks from Toronto or North Bay, Ontario.
Price. Yeah.
So it depends on where you live.
For sure.
The culture, the mentality, a lot of different variables. The weather.
Right.
Warmer climates have cleaner food systems. The tropics.
Yes.
Right. You just grow bananas at the side of the road.
Right. From a political standpoint, where do you think the help would come from? Why do you think, say, maybe the Green Party is not getting enough attention in Canada? I mean, it's getting better, right? The support. But it's almost, people almost look at them as sort of like the joke party, unfortunately. And why do you think
that's going to change this election. It's going to be interesting because they've got 2 seats now.
Yeah.
They've only ever had one with Elizabeth May. Well, I think that one of our biggest problems in Canada is so few people are actually engaged in the political system. Mm-hmm. So few people vote.
Yes.
So few people.
Right.
Most people have just kind of checked out. Oh, I could never, it's corrupt. I'm not interested. So we're not even running a pure democracy.
Exactly.
To use the word pure, where democracy is really being controlled by a very small amount of people who get out and vote in this country and want to control policy.
Yeah.
If it was mandatory to vote, there is a country that you don't get a driver's license unless you vote. If we had 36 million people voting, we would have a completely different food system.
Yeah.
But maybe 15 to 35% of the people vote?
Right. Exactly.
So that's a big thing to fix. We could change that with policy.
For sure. And you don't think that median vote would stay the same even if everyone was voting? You don't think they would still vote the same way?
I don't think most people, if they knew the issue, I don't think most people would vote for chemicals on their food. So now we have glyphosate license for 15 more years,
Right.
thanks to Health Canada.
Yeah.
This is an herbicide that is being banned all over the world.
Yeah.
If 36 million Canadians went to vote on that, if we had a referendum about glyphosate,
Yeah.
there is no way a majority would say yes.
Right.
If they knew the issue,
Yeah.
they understood it.
Yeah, yeah.
But who's controlling that vote? Industrial farmers, industrial corporations. So that's why we have the chemical on our food.
Of course.
And it's a
Yeah.
complicated story, and people, they don't want to get depressed. Life is hard right now in Canada. Like,
Yeah.
oh God, some other miserable thing.
Right. I'll be honest right now. I'm thinking of how to get us out of this depression topic right now. It's unfortunate people ignore it because they don't want it, right? It's just too much. It's too heavy. It's too much to think about, right?
But I always say to people, then hang out with people who grow food, or even just grow like 3 herbs on your windowsill.
Yeah,
Action always alleviates the depression or the apathy, right?
for sure.
And growing food is one of the most therapeutic things you can do. Don't put your pressure on yourself that you're going to make money at it or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just grow an herb in the window of your kitchen.
Right.
And your life will change. It will start to change. Spend
Yeah.
$5 at a nursery, start growing basil.
Right. It's amazing that so many people, like an older generation, have found so much care in gardening. Like that's a dying thing. I can't tell you a single one of my friends who's planted something before, is growing something.
Well, there is a big young home garden movement. You're obviously not in it, but it's growing. Yeah,
Right.
more on the east side. I don't know where you
Maybe that's
live,
what it
but
is.
Main
Yeah.
Street commercial.
Well, I'm in Kitsilano. I'm right next to you.
Yeah, it's not really happening on the west side.
No.
Because I'm on the west side too. Or you can
Right.
go and hang out at UBC Farm. I
Okay.
go there all the time.
Interesting.
Awesome food movement out there.
Really? And is that started by the university, or is that just a third-party group? That's
No,
coming to
it's
start that?
it's within the university. It's their sustainable land and food systems
Okay.
department.
Right.
And they run the UBC farm.
Yeah.
And there's a children's greenhouse.
That's great.
It's awesome. I was there for a social justice meeting, and you could literally stand next to all this organic food and go, oh, okay, this is how it's possible.
Now we see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you could steal a cabbage and nobody would know and feed yourself healthy organic food.
Right. Right. The subliminal messaging you're throwing in.
No, I mean, food is, if you think about it, it's the most abundant. It's ridiculous how abundant it is. Like, I think it was Gregor Robertson that might have been responsible for this. There's herbs in Olympic Village, in that community. There's
Right.
herbs growing on the boulevard. Nobody knows it because they don't even recognize herbs, or they wouldn't think to look.
Yeah, no.
There's rosemary, there's mint, and there's one other one. My daughter picked it up and said, "Mommy, this is mint." There's herbs growing on
Right.
2nd Avenue
Yeah.
by the Olympic Village community. So we can do it anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, we can do things like that.
You mean I'm wasting $5 a pop on my mojitos, and
Yeah.
I could just be picking it up?
That's more
and
food
sucking
that you
up.
could steal. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what's so thrilling about living in Africa. Literally, you throw a banana peel at the side of the road and a tree grows.
Yes.
There is clean plant food everywhere. It is so abundant.
Right.
And we can create those policies here.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't Africa have such a terrible food epidemic right now?
Well, they
overall?
haven't invested in the systems that allow most of the food to get to market. So there's a
Okay.
huge amount of waste.
Right.
The chemical companies are coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, because Africa is the breadbasket of the world. But that's changing because of tech and because of tech tools. There's a
Right.
lot of efficiencies being built. Nairobi is the hub. I used to live in Nairobi for 4 years.
Okay.
And there's millennials, just like you, on their smartphones, figuring out how a woman, again, it's a lot of it is women who has a very small plot,
Yep.
could make a living and support her family if she has access to markets without losing all the profit margin in the supply chain,
Sure.
in the middlemen, so that she could literally have a guy on a bicycle deliver to a family home. Like me, I
Yeah.
would spend $100 on vegetables,
Right.
whatever, for that week or the month, and I would be buying them from her directly rather than going into the big French-owned grocery store in
Yes.
Africa.
Right.
Yeah.
Kidding. Yeah.
But Africa, I mean, that's the bounty. If Africa can figure this out, then the rest of us can.
No kidding. What about education for your 2 kids that you have? Are you do you see an activist bone in their body as well? Are they
Yeah.
joining the movement? Because
Well,
of
they're
Mom, or-
activists for themselves with me.
Right.
Right. I'll say,
Yeah.
okay, put your pajamas on. And my son will say, you are not the boss of me.
Yes.
And I allow that to
Don't you
happen.
love that, though, at
Yeah,
the same-
I do.
yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes I have to wrestle them down, but
Right.
no, I totally allow that healthy self-preservation, because they're going to need that.
Sure.
Every mother would probably, and parent would say that. But they're getting a ton of it in the school system in our school in particular, maybe, or Vancouver School Board, big time around food activism. They have little baby fish that they're growing in the libraries. So it's there. It's there in the curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever want to do something in schools, let me know.
Definitely.
But I think they watch me, they watch me and how I will advocate for us as a family, certain things. And they will make their own choices. My son is much more of an activist than my daughter is.
Really? Okay.
Well, she is at heart, but she's quieter.
Right.
Yeah, he's more of an extrovert.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the easiest way to raise kids is just allow them to be in your life and let them don't screen anything out.
Yeah.
Let them see what it is. But they're naturally activists for themselves. I mean, my daughter's first word was no.
Right. And why do you think that's so negative? Most parents think of that as a negative thing, right?
Well, it makes their life a little harder.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No. Okay. So you have to negotiate with them. But I think in the long run, parents realize the more empowered, and I was raised like that. So I'm raising my kids the way I was raised.
Right.
I was raised by empowered parents. And also in the 70s, that's the way it was done. It was like, just, okay, come back at dinner. Nobody hung around with us. Nobody patrolled us. It was a different world. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a theory called the helicopter parent that was really around in the past 15 years, parents who were over-parenting.
Yeah.
But I think that trend is going away now. A lot of parents are realizing that it raised children who weren't advocates for themselves because the parent was doing too much.
Yeah, yeah. A child questioning should never be a bad thing, I don't think, right? It should never be. And of course, as you said, it makes more work for the parents. But that should never be seen as a negative thing or something you want to suppress.
And I'm 50. Like, I'm an older mom, and I have friends. A lot of my mom friends are in their 20s or 30s, or 30s, early 30s.
Right.
And they do things differently because they have less life experience.
Yeah.
And they want to get in there and help whatever. And partly I'm just like, I don't have the energy. And I'm like, well, just you get up because I don't want to lift you.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm glad I'm an older parent. I think I'm making better choices because I have more life experience as an older mom.
Right. Let's talk about your skincare regime then. You do not look 50 at all.
Really?
No,
Thank you.
At all. Maybe it's all the clean food. That's where it's the organic food right there.
And I don't drink. Big one. I used to drink just like a lot of people, not heavy, but I literally will only have 2 drinks a week now, at the most.
Wow. I feel like we have nothing in common anymore.
Yeah, I know, we can never be friends. That's a huge one, especially at my age.
Yeah.
The alcohol is a killer on your skin.
For sure.
So, and vegan food, so mostly organic plant food.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the inflammatory properties in alcohol is unbelievable. Yeah.
Being happy, I get a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
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 Good skincare and good lighting.
Right. Helps along the way.
No, I think stress, like I am not a stressful person. I made choices specifically in the last 20 years to be happy. I had depression for 2 years that I think was a pharmaceutical injury, to be honest, when I was working in the Blood Diamond Wars in West Africa.
Right.
I took mefloquine and it is linked to depression.
Wow.
So I consciously make myself happy every single day, and food is a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I think a less stressed person has a healthier body.
Right.
All the systems are healthier. The stress is hugely oxidative and toxic on your body.
For sure. Yeah. Of everything you've gone through in the past now, looking at the future, what's next for you? What do you think? What's the next thing that you're...
My TV projects.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I'm on hold basically because I've chosen not really to start them until we're back on the other side of the world.
Okay.
Because it's a different culture and market or whatever.
Yeah.
But if I'm also writing a feature film about my husband's kidnapping, everybody always told me to, right?
I was just going to say, when's the screenplay coming? I mean, that's...
Well, I've started writing it. It's called Uprising.
That's great.
Oh, it's going to be a lot sexier than the real story. Yeah. Like Range Rovers, London, everything, right?
I love the Range.
Falconry in the Sahara, like really great big commercial Hollywood stuff. That's my background.
Yeah.
But again, it's a story for women to inspire them to rise up and rise up in their own life and be a force of change and to speak out, because a lot of women don't.
Sure.
Like what you were mentioning. So those 2 things, those are the big things I'm trying to do. My husband really wants to retire.
Okay.
He's sort of done with his job.
Absolutely.
So now my kids are a bit older and it's my turn to bring in the money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have a connection to Jennifer Lawrence at all to play you in the film? I mean, that would be...
No, I love her.
Pick.
I've chosen a Canadian actress named Sarah Gaydon. I mean, I've chosen in your
head. Yeah.
It's called a lookbook. You make a lookbook.
Right.
And I've chosen Sting to play William Hague. Do you know who William Hague was. He was the foreign minister at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sting looks exactly like him now that he's bald.
That's incredible.
And Sting's amazing. He's so
Right.
sexy, and he's the British accent, right?
Yes.
And a very well-known, very hot Egyptian actor right now who's American. His name is Rami Malek. He
course.
played, Rami.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I want him to play the business tycoon in the story who falls in love with my character.
Okay.
Which of course didn't happen, but it's going
Right.
to make it more
Still-
interesting.
of course it will.
He will help me find my husband. He was my best friend. He's based
Right.
on my best friend's character.
That's great.
So I'm kind of sculpting it all now. Who knows if any of that will happen? But I'm trying to finance it out of Abu Dhabi with
Okay.
an Arab production partner.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
to tell the great story of the West and the Arab world meeting in the middle.
Sure.
It's a story of culture and compassion and injustice and justice.
Right. Well, and any great screenplay that you hear, everyone has, their A-list in mind that they're going to write, that they can see just embodying that personality or embodying.
Well,
the
it
role.
always start at the top.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why
So
would
this
you?
woman's name is Sarah Gadon, if anybody wants to look at her. And she's much younger than I was, but the character probably needs to be young.
Right.
To have like a 45-year-old pregnant woman. And she's from Toronto, and she's magnificent looking and will be on screen. She just has that screen face. She has the Grace Kelly thing, but she's probably going to be too busy or too expensive. So
Right.
you just work down. You start at the top and work down.
Okay. Well, we'll get her on a podcast and convince her to.
Sarah Gadon.
Sarah
Yeah.
Gadon. Perfect. We'll get on that. I would like to finish with a couple of rapid Pure questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So these were stolen from, I don't know if you've ever watched Inside the Actors Studio.
Yes, of course.
So James Lipton, and the questions he would always end with, I always thought were just so simple but so succinct, and I stole them from him. So the first one is, what is your favorite word?
Well, it's a Swahili word,
Okay.
and it's shinda, and it means to overcome.
Nice. And what is your least favorite word?
No,
What?
impossible.
All of the above.
Yeah.
What sound do you love?
Ooh, I love the sound of my daughter's voice. She sings all the time.
What sound do you hate?
Grinding metallic machines and
Like what's been going on this entire
Yeah.
podcast? Yeah. Okay, great. What turns you on?
what turns me on? Beauty.
And what turns you off?
Interesting. Refusal.
Mm-hmm.
Refusal to learn, to understand, to talk.
Yeah. Is that similar to ignorance then?
Well, refusal has an intention. Ignorance can just be ignorance.
Right,
Someone who refuses to allow something to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the basis of injustice.
I like that. This seems like an odd question for you, but what profession would you like to try?
Well, I'm hoping to become a screenwriter through this writing of the screenplay.
Yeah.
I got 110 pages, and I love it because I've always been a photographer. I've always been on the picture side, but the writing side is really amazing.
For sure.
And I like it. I think this is something I can do well. I
Right.
would like to write a couple of other movies about things in Africa that I've experienced, or big stories,
Yeah.
important stories about Africa.
Incredible. Okay. And what profession would you not like to try? You've seen so much of the world. I'm sure
Database
Oh, okay.
management.
Yeah.
Like anything to do with a computer where I have to sit in one place all day long.
Right. Just monotonous
Yeah.
everyday work.
Data entry.
That's fair. And the tagline for our podcast is Living Pure. So if I said, what does living pure mean to you?
Well, I'm starving, so I'm going to go find myself a smoothie or a juice bar.
Yeah.
Simple choices every day. Choosing less, doing less,
Right.
worrying less, and be happy. My grandmother lived till 105.
Wow.
My maternal grandmother, my mom who died, her mother.
Okay.
And before she died, she always used to say to me, just be happy. It's the most important thing.
Right.
It's the goal of life. And I think Gandhi says that. Some of the biggies have said that.
Yeah.
Be happy.
And just be happy.
Just be happy. That's the goal of life.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sue.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.